This is the story of a couple who went to a wedding, but they didn't know it would turn into a dangerous game of survival. Watch the video till the end. This video is full of entertainment, and we have removed all boring parts. Enjoy. The movie starts with Nick and Audrey Spitz, who now run a private detective agency after quitting their jobs 4 years ago. They became popular after solving a big case but turned out to be bad detectives. In the previous movie, we saw Audrey and Nick trying to be detectives, which hinted that they might take it up as a career. But what dark secrets will unfold as they step into their next mystery? Later, the Maharaja invites them to his all-expenses-paid wedding on a private island. They meet the colonel, who lost one arm while protecting the Maharaja from a bullet. The Maharaja has a new bodyguard, Lewis, who works with the colonel, but the colonel doesn't like him. Nick and Audrey also meet Claudette, the Maharaja's fiancée, who used to be a civilian. Claudette and the Maharaja quickly fall in love and decide to get married. But will this glamorous wedding turn into a nightmare? In their room, Nick and Audrey are overwhelmed by the luxury gifts, food, and outfits provided by the hosts. At the wedding ceremony, they meet Francisco, a retired soccer player. Audrey has an awkward encounter with Countess Sukuyu and Sarah, the Maharaja's half-sister. The Maharaja, Vikram, makes a grand entrance riding an elephant, but the guests are shocked to find out that the person stabbed with the knife is Lewis, dressed as the Maharaja. Nick quickly searches for the real Maharaja, who has been taken away by a man dressed in black. What shocking twist will test their detective skills next? Nick and Audrey start investigating the Maharaja's kidnapping and Lewis's murder. They figure out that someone guided Lewis on the elephant, while another person kidnapped the Maharaja. Finally, Nick and Audrey have a case to solve after a long time. After learning something from the colonel, Nick narrows down the list of suspects to the colonel, Claudette, Sekou, Sarah, and Francisco. The Spitzes agree to take on the case. That night, the suspects visit Nick and Audrey's room to discuss who they think the accomplice is, and Claudette receives a call from the kidnappers, warning them not to call the police. Can they uncover the truth before it's too late? In the morning, the colonel introduces Nick and Audrey to a high-profile investigator, but the investigator ends up blaming them for the crime. Nick wants to leave, but the colonel convinces him to stay by saying that the kidnappers would only talk to the Spitzes. Miller and his team try to trace the call, and Nick talks to the person on the other end, who asks for $50 million as ransom. Later, the kidnapper raises the ransom to $60 million and asks for the money to be delivered in Paris. Audrey asks for proof that the Maharaja is alive, and the couple tries to trap the kidnapper, but the ransom is raised again to $70 million before the call ends. Will they manage to outwit the kidnappers and save the Maharaja? On their way to the drop-off location, Miller puts Audrey in charge of the phone and gun, while Nick carries the ransom money. When they arrive, the kidnapper calls them, and the Maharaja speaks briefly to the couple. The kidnapper then asks them to put the money in a van. However, Nick and Audrey are kidnapped and forced to hand over the money. Nick fights back, killing one of the kidnappers with an axe. Audrey tries to drive the van with a dead man in the driver's seat, and they end up crashing into a restaurant. Will their bravery be enough to turn the tide? Inside the restaurant, the couple learns that the cheese knife from their room was the murder weapon used on Lewis, and now they are the prime suspects. Miller finds the Spitzes and takes away the ransom money, making Audrey suspect that he might be the kidnapper. Suddenly, Miller's car explodes, killing him, and a biker steals the suitcase full of cash. However, the biker has an accident and a truck driver takes the suitcase. Audrey notes down the truck's number, and they leave to go to the opera to meet Inspector de la Croix, whom they last saw 4 years ago. What shocking revelations will they uncover as they get closer to the truth? At the opera, de la Croix helps them trace the truck's location. The couple borrows his car and phone, then calls the colonel to stall the kidnappers while they track down the money. They arrive at the location and find Countess Sukuyu and Amani there. The two women tie up Nick and Audrey, and Sukuyu kills Amani before fleeing with the money. Sukuyu burns down the house, but Amani shoots her before dying. Nick and Audrey worry about being blamed for 2 more murders as they try to escape while tied up. They eventually free themselves but can't find a way out as the fire spreads. They escape with the suitcase and find a Lamborghini. Will they make it out alive and solve the case? They call all the suspects for a meeting at a restaurant in the Eiffel Tower to expose the motives behind the kidnapping. While Sarah could become the sole heiress of the Maharaja's company, Nick points out that Claudette needed the money because she wouldn't get any if she married the Maharaja due to the prenup she signed. He also believes the colonel might have done it because he hated how rich people treated him and wanted to get a bionic arm. Who will be unmasked as the true mastermind behind the crime? Suddenly, the Maharaja walks into the restaurant tied to a bomb. He asks Nick to place the money in the elevator, which would prompt the kidnappers to send down a detonator to stop the bomb. With less than a minute left, Nick decides to stall, believing the bomb is fake. When the timer reaches 0, everyone is shocked to see the bomb didn't go off. Can Nick and Audrey outsmart the mastermind before it's too late? Then, Miller enters the restaurant, steals the money, and reactivates the bomb before escaping. Audrey grabs onto Miller and escapes with him to the top of the Eiffel Tower. Nick follows, and and fights Miller's men on the stairs. Audrey manages to steal the detonator from Miller and turns off the bomb. Francisco arrives to help Nick, while Audrey threatens to throw the suitcase full of cash if Miller tries anything. Nick attempts to shoot Miller but fails. Eventually, Nick destroys the detonator, disabling the bomb. Will their final confrontation reveal the shocking truths? Miller pushes Audrey off the roof and grabs the briefcase, but Nick tackles him. Audrey hangs from the tower using a harness. Nick opens the suitcase just as Miller's helicopter arrives, and the money flies out. Miller orders the helicopter pilot to kill the witnesses in the restaurant, but Audrey holds onto the tower while Nick fights Miller. Audrey arrives with a gun but fails to shoot Miller. The couple works together to tie Miller to the harness, and Nick pushes him off the Eiffel Tower, causing him to crash. Will the Spitzes finally find peace, or is there one last twist awaiting them? Back at the restaurant, Audrey realizes that Sarah mirrored her henna during the Sangeet, leading her to steal a gun and try to shoot the Maharaja. However, the Colonel saves him, though he gets shot in his remaining arm. Claudette helps tackle Sarah, and the Maharaja and Claudette decide to elope. What will be the final outcome of this tangled web of deception? In the end, the Maharaja sends Nick and Audrey a briefcase with $10 million as a thank you gift, along with a $3 million briefcase. The couple goes on a honeymoon using the Maharaja's private helicopter, but the pilot steals their cash and jumps out of the helicopter. How will the Spitzes handle this unexpected turn of events? Subscribe for popcorn. We are racing towards 500 subscribers.